You're still tuned into the morning show right here on ETV. Now, today is World Day Against Child Labor. And while the issue is often associated with fields like factories or sweatshops, it also lurks in unexpected spaces. This includes the film and television industry. And behind the glitz of child stardom, many young actors face serious exploitation. And joining us this morning is Carlynn de Waal-Smit from the South African Guild of Actors to explore how the entertainment world must confront its role in protecting children on and off set. Carlynn, welcome to the morning show. It's so good to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Bulele.
My goodness, I think generally when we just think about the entertainment industry, there's just a whole lot to go on about, right?
Yeah.
And there's quite a lot of frustration that currently a lot of people in the field are just trying to deal with. There are rights that a lot of people in the field are trying to fight for. Yeah. But today we're putting focus on the rights of children in the entertainment industry. I think generally from a parent's perspective, it's the ability for their child to live out their dreams, right? Yeah. And for their child to maybe start making money at a young age, but there are pros with that, but at the same time, there are cons, right? What have you found to be some of the things that mostly parents putting their kids into the entertainment industry misinterpret about that decision that they have made?
You know, I think the important thing to realize is that parents often are not educated around exactly, you know, what does it mean to have your child on set in a theatre production? Yeah. And also understanding that there's legislation that supports it. Yeah. You know, child labour, in South Africa, children can't work.
Yes.
So this has kind of been a carve out in the legislation to say, listen here, when children do work within this kind of sphere and area, there is legislation that supports it, you know, through the Department of Employment and Labour and legislation that came in 2004. So I think often you find that, you know, children will have an agent, and the agent then facilitates most of the things for them. Yes. But unfortunately, that communication about the rights and the legalities not really shared with parents, or a lot of parents don't even know that this is meant to happen. And the scary part, you have agents who don't know, and you have producers who don't know. So there is an entire process of getting permits and hours of work, and ultimately that isn't being followed to the letter in all of the areas where where children are working.
I think one thing that can be spoken about is how the spotlight doesn't guarantee safety, right? And a lot of the time this is only then recognized much later when now children are already in the spotlight, but now they are needing to face issues of missing things like school, facing issues of maybe not being taken care of well on set and even off set, right? Talk to us then about how child actors are vulnerable to both emotional and legal exploitation in our entertainment industry.
So going to the legal is exactly that, you know, having permits, and for producers to understand what the provisions of that legislation is. You know, for example, there are minimum hours of work. Yeah. Children under 15 are the people who need to be covered by, you know, the legislative framework, and the number of hours that children between, you know, 10 and 15 and under 10 and under 5, you know, the number of hours they can be on set, plus the breaks. Sure. Also that you need a parent and legal guardian to be there with
on
you,
set,
as well as a chaperone. Yeah. So very often, you know, if it's one day, for example, for a commercial, then, you know, you're not going to need a chaperone necessarily, and you're not going to need a teacher on set. However, when children work longer on projects, part of what they have to accommodate in terms of the producers on that production is that you have to have a tutor on set. And the tutor needs to liaise with the child's school so that they don't miss certain work, that they actually have the lessons planned ahead of time, so that the child can actually carry on within the breaks of some kind of schooling. I mean, we all know, and maybe some of your viewers don't know, but a lot of, you know, being on set is hurry up and wait.
Yes.
So in those break times, you know, that's when the children,
tutor would come into...
Exactly, exactly. And also for children, say, who are not at school-going age, they have to have a play area. They have to have, you know, a waiting area that is conducive to
their growth
the nature
and development.
Of a child. Yeah, exactly. You know, you need to be able to have a play area for somebody who's 3 or 4 and have them supervised the entire time.
Sure.
So children cannot be on their own at any given time. Plus they have to be slightly separate from the adults and people who are not necessarily behaving in a way that is conducive
to them.
To children.
Like just allowing children to be children.
Exactly.
Are these then some of the things that production houses do put into consideration? Are these some of the things that production houses do offer? Or has it just become a thing of, because parents are not in the know of it, we're also just going to disregard it?
Well, you see, the tricky part is if you actually are getting a permit, these are the provisions that are in the legislation. Do people adhere to them? I can guarantee you my answer is no. If you're talking about exploitation on an emotional level, what we're finding more and more, if you have a look at the content that's going out, it's way more risky than it's ever been. If we are looking at the stories that people are telling, and specifically in South Africa, if we're telling South African stories, you are looking at some kind of abuse or some kind of difficult situation. And what we're finding more and more is that children are not being coached into the roles that they are playing. And therefore, they don't necessarily know the difference between play and reality. So unfortunately, and it's happened relatively recently, I think, you know, SAGA is definitely a voice that is speaking out about everything. We will hold everybody accountable.
And we are so grateful for that voice.
You know? And recently we've actually been in a situation where there was a production in KZN that had a child on set, that the child was in I think the child was like under 5, where the child was in a traumatic relationship with the parent in the role, correct. And there was no coaching around it. The child was absolutely traumatized. The next time they came onto set, they were crying. There was no way that you could get them perform because they had been in through a massive, massive trauma.
Oh my goodness.
And this for me is unacceptable when we're sitting in situations where our children are vulnerable anyway. And the permit, unfortunately, doesn't speak to the vulnerability when it comes to the content of what we're shooting. So more and more what we're pushing for in South Africa, and it's kind of a conversation that has started relatively recently, is looking at child coordinators when it comes to sensitive content. So there's a group of and a company called Safe Sets who currently deal with intimate and sensitive content when it comes to adults. So if there are love scenes or kissing scenes, there's actually a choreographer, so to speak, to be able to work with the performers, that everybody consents to it, and you know that they are okay with how it's going to be, how it's going to be portrayed. That hasn't come in when it comes to children. And so they are looking at extending that reach so that it can include children, so that when there is a scene where there's a fight between a mother and a father, or a mother and a child, and they're witnessing this, that
they know that it's not part of their reality, but just what is happening for that moment. But also I think just some sort of psychological evaluation afterwards, you know, just generally with actors, there is the need to de-roll, there is the need to go through certain activities that are going to remove you from that experience. So ultimately the same then needs to be provided for children. Not that it is even provided for actors that are on set, it's just them trying to find their own way.
Part of their own technique.
Yes, in trying to accomplish that. What then, now that this information is out there, more so in this conversation that we are having, that parents are able to gain this information from you, what then can a parent do if they are with a child that possibly is on set or are looking into getting their children on sets? Are they able, number one, to demand that there are certain things put in place before their child goes onto set? Or does it then pose the risk of, well, if you're not in agreement with our terms, then we'll find someone else?
You know, I think this is where the agent bridges that gap.
Okay.
So I would suggest, you know, to any parent who wants to get their child into show business, that you get an agent, that you have somebody who is there to navigate. The difficulty is that agents are not registered. So within that also lies a vulnerability. You know, so for example, there's an organization called the PMA, which is, you know, there to be able to deal with professional agents, and that's the organization. So I would always suggest going to their website, thepma.co.za, and having a look at, you know, different agents' websites and those that do represent children. That's the first thing. The other part of it that I think is important is you can contact SAGA. You know, SAGA can tell you what the sectoral determination 10 provisions are. You know, and yes, you need to make sure that children are transported, that there's always, you know, a parent or legal guardian on set, that there is food that they're covered, you know, and rest areas, and that they are taken care of. And the interesting thing for me with looking at like the vulnerability again is, you know, the fact that we need professional people able to evaluate the psychological impact, not only afterwards, but going into it. Do you understand what the scene means? Do you understand? And there are psychological kind of examples and techniques that, you know, people who really are in the know can use to ensure that they can separate the play part from the reality part.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also maybe parents just, you know, taking it upon themselves to also do that for their kids.
Correct.
You know, I think ultimately parents get excited to recognize a talent within their child, and they just really want to push it out there. But over and above that, there are certain risks that are posed towards the child and their growth and their development. So to have a parent that is cognizant of that, that is walking that journey with their child, ultimately is important. I just want to wrap up our conversation with just possibly highlighting the fight and the cause that SAGA continues with the rights of actors and entertainers in South Africa. How far are we with that? How best can you know, our viewers or communities rally behind SAGA in fighting for the rights of performers?
Yeah, so, you know, SAGA is up there trying to have as many conversations as possible with you know, government and making submissions, you know, Department of Employment and Labour and, you know, Trade and Industry, and you know, we have 3 main kind of pillars at the moment, which is the very contentious Copyright Amendment Bill and Performers Protection Amendment Bill that has just been at the Constitutional Court. We're still waiting for some kind of result from that deliberation. It is a very, very tricky legislation, and SAGA's been involved for the entirety of it. So like more than 7 years we've been plodding along at it. You know, the other thing that the Department of Employment and Labour is doing is that they're looking at redefining the definition of an employee to try and encompass freelancers.
Freelancers, yes, which is very important.
And, you know, gig workers, the Uber drivers and those people. And SAGA's not 100% sure that they're covering us in the way that we need to, but we're going to be making our submissions in Parliament and doing whatever it is we need to do. And the third thing that we've had to do is we've had to apply for an exemption from the Competition Commission in order to sit with the producers and with agents and with actors to be able to negotiate fair contracts and rates. We haven't been able to do that up until now because it would be price fixing, or it would be, you know, colluding. So the tricky part has been that we can't sit down. SAGA and the PMA actually made an application to the Competition Commission, and in December we were granted it. So this year's process is about getting people together and being able to negotiate, as you would in any other industry.
Absolutely.
You know, mining or manufacturing or whatever. Everybody has the ability for bargaining collectively, sitting down, you know, across from the people who are giving you the work and the people, you know, who are doing the work.
Absolutely.
So we're really excited that this has been the first win of 3 that we're dealing with. So, you know, that fight has been a fight. You know, and SAGA's looking at opening up a reporting line so that you can come in and report any issues that you may have. We also are all over social media. I'm sure a lot of people have seen. If you're interested, you know, we're on everything.
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, the whole shebang.
We're not quite there on TikTok as yet, but we are getting there. And LinkedIn, we're there as well. So I think the big thing is the more we are out there, the more people want to support us. I mean, in terms of audience and in terms of, you know, people who are not actors, we do have a tier of membership called a patron member, which means that anybody who is not a performer is welcome to contact us and make some or other contribution towards the cause.
Fantastic.
You know, and they can get the tax exemption certificate because we are, you know, a public benefit organization. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible for people to engage with us and for us to really represent an area that has been forgotten.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
legislatively, people have forgotten about the actors.
The actors, yet they love them so much. They continue to be entertained by the actors. They continue to consume the content that is provided by the actors. And I think the more they become aware of what their favorite people might be going through, I think then the more they can actually start rallying behind the cause. Carlynn, thank you so much for the work that you guys do at SAGA. I think it's very important, and we are glad that there is progress. And we will continue to rally behind SAGA and the work that they're doing. So thank you so much for your time.
I really appreciate the opportunity because I think the topic of, you know, child working is quite high on our agenda at the moment because of these cases that we're hearing about.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate the time.
No, thank you so much for yours. That was Carlynn with us right here on The Morning Show. Man, there is a lot that needs to be considered when it comes to the world of entertainment. And I think this conversation has just been testament to the fact that as a parent that is putting their child in the entertainment industry, there's a lot that you need to consider. If anything, the one thing that I will push you towards is to at least walk the journey with your child. Yes, you recognize that talent. You recognize that they are born to be stars. But what comes with becoming a star? I think Carlynn has just really helped us outline all of that. And as a parent, I just hope that this conversation has brought some sort of insight into your world and is now making you more aware of some of the things that happen and how best you can support your child in a situation where they are finding themselves wanting to be part of the entertainment industry. Over and above that, continue to follow SAGA on social media, rally behind the causes that they are fighting towards, and you know, the rights of performers in the entertainment industry, because that is a fight that we will continue to fight until we become victorious at the end. Stick around, we're back with more right after this.